Hi everyone, GM. We are about to start our very first Tanssi Cast. We are waiting for some people to join, so stay tuned here. We're gonna start very soon.
Hey guys.
Hi everyone. So let's get started, right? First of all, Misha, thank you very much for joining us. Francisco as well. So it's a pleasure. I'd like to kick things off by just introducing myself briefly and also telling a little bit more to our crowd here. What's the idea of this TV show and in this series of podcasts? So yeah, myself about a little bit about myself. So I'm Tiago. I'm one of the co-founders of Tanssi, and I'm the CEO of the Tanssi Foundation. And yeah, we as you guys know, we have always been very focused in education in general and very focused in community building. So I think this initiative is a key component of this whole mindset of Tanssi, and that actually we share with Symbiotic. So the idea is to bring the latest about Tanssi, bring the latest about our partners, what are we focused on right now. And I mean, this was an amazing initiative from our marketing team. Shout out to them, by the way. And yeah, so no wonder you guys know that we recently announced our expansion to Ethereum, and we of course we're gonna be talking a little bit more about that going forward. But what people might not know is that Symbiotic is actually one of the key parts of this expansion, right? So no wonder we invited Misha to join us today, and it's been a pleasure and an honor to work with you guys. So yeah, to kick things off, maybe Misha and Francisco, do you guys want to introduce yourselves to our community and tell a little bit more about your background, what you guys are building, and what are you mostly focused on recently? Maybe starting with you, Misha.
Yeah, sure. Happy to be here, by the way. Yeah, I've been doing infrastructure for some time. Like for the last year, I was building Symbiotic, which we're gonna talk about some more later. And before that, we created with my co-founder Algis. We created a research and security firm called StateMind. So we were focused mainly on breaking blockchain and protocols and helping them design in a way that's sustainable and in a way that's safe for people to use. That organically progressed into our thinking of where are the parts of the industry that are not as secure as we want them to be. And decentralization is basically one aspect that was, in my mind at least, lacking for some time. So we created Symbiotic, generalized shared security protocol, which basically solves a lot of helps to reach decentralization easier, faster, and cheaper and safer. So yeah, we've been developing it for a year, around that, maybe a bit more. And yeah, finally ready to go mainnet. So super excited about that.
Exciting. Yeah, I'm ready for that. So Francisco, if you wanna bring some light about your background and whatever you think that's relevant, the stage is yours.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tiago. It's a pleasure to have you, Misha. By the way, where are you right now? Are you still in Singapore after Token 2049, or are you back home?
Already home, thankfully. Okay. Yeah, Singapore is amazing, but yeah, it's nice to be home.
And where is home? What part of the world are you in?
Dubai.
Okay, cool. Nice. Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to have you, Misha. So my name is Francisco. I'm also one of the co-founders of Tanssi and the CEO of Moondance Labs, one of the core contributors to Tanssi. Prior to starting Tanssi, I was part of the core team at Moonbeam, which was an EVM chain in the Polkadot ecosystem. And yeah, it was actually through the process of building out Moonbeam that the idea for Tanssi happened, since we just kind of started seeing, we experienced ourselves firsthand the developer experience when it came to building a chain, right? That it was very lacking and there were a lot of friction points. And then we just started speaking to different teams in the space. And after having spoken to dozens of teams, on Polkadot, Cosmos, Avalanche, pretty much every team that we spoke to told us that they ran into similar issues that we did. So that's really when we thought, okay, there's a real problem to solve here in the space. In parallel, the app chain, rollup narrative was picking up a lot. There was a big demand for that. So that's when we thought, okay, let's go all in on Tanssi. And yeah, most recently, like Tiago said, we're expanding to the Ethereum ecosystem via Symbiotic. I think that's going to be restaking in general, I think is the next iteration of Web3's evolution, which I'm very excited by. And it's a pleasure to be working with the Symbiotic team on that.
All right, nice, nice. So, and Francisco, just using this hook. So, would you like to bring more light about this expansion movement? What are our focus and tendency? What are the main goals? What are the problems we want to solve? I think that's a good way to kick off and start to bring our audience to the core of the discussions here.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, first of all, to describe Tanssi, right? Tanssi itself is a protocol to enable the deployment of decentralized networks, right? Symbiotic is kind of enabling the deployment of networks through restaking, and Tanssi wants to just make it substantially easier from a developer experience standpoint to deploy these types of networks. We are focusing initially on decentralized networks, so on-chain ones, since I think we will see kind of off-chain services and networks as well that combine with restaking. But yeah, it relates a lot to what I was saying before, right? Like decentralized networks, you can call them chains as well. We're still very early on in this space, right? And I think the developer, we're really focused on developers, right? And developer experience. And I think while restaking and what Symbiotic is doing is going to kind of enable the next wave of applications in Web3, there's a whole kind of area around this design space where we think can be improved, right? Where we can enable developers to go to the time to market, make it a lot quicker, right? Make it a lot easier to deploy these networks. And I think by making it a lot easier, it's just going to accelerate the development of these networks, right? Because developers won't have to kind of focus on these things that they don't want to, right? Starting with protocol primitives like, okay, shared security, block production, data availability, right? Interoperability. And then that's kind of the foundational level of these networks. And then on top of that, you start adding, okay, once I have the network, you need block explorers, indexers, RPC endpoints, oracles, bridges, all these different tools, right? And the idea with Tanssi is that we want to kind of incorporate all of these infrastructural components that are inherent with launching networks. We want to include them in kind of Tanssi's protocol, right? To kind of cut the time to market, because developers at the end of the day, they want to focus on the applications they're building, right? They don't want to have to spend resources, time, and energy on all these infrastructural pieces. The challenge is obviously making this in a fully automated way without compromising on decentralization, security, and developer experience. And that's really the core of what we're trying to do with Tanssi. And the whole idea of Tanssi is enabled by Symbiotic, right? So this is a very strategic component of what we're doing.
Yeah, amazing. If I can just top up with some of my personal experience during this process at Tanssi and everything. Sometimes the builders, they are already like building some things that are very, very complex, right? So the least thing they want to do is like spend time and resources taking care of the infrastructure management, right? And just to make an analogy to Web2 world, like we saw this happening as well with AWS, right? So do you want to spend resources and engineering team and just for maintaining the infrastructure, or do you want, I mean, if you're a bank, for instance, do you want to just take care of your services and enhance your product and everything? So that's a useful analogy usually to better understand what you're offering. But I think that one of the key questions here, one of the key subjects here is restaking, right? But I think before talking about restaking, maybe it's useful to also talk a little bit about staking, right? And maybe Francisco, if you want to get that, so that Misha can, in the sequence, talk a little bit about restaking. I think staking is a very, it's a term that kind of expanded its meaning a lot, right? So you can say you're staking a stable coin in order to receive, some yield on top of that. But that's not exactly the same staking that we are talking about right here. So do you want to give just a step back for context, Francisco, and tell us more about like what type of staking are we talking about, like the security staking, the security meaning of the word staking, right? That
Yeah,
I think
sure. I'll maybe go briefly through that, and I'd also, I'd love to pick like Misha's brain on this topic, and also to learn a little bit more about kind of Symbiotic's role in all this, right? I mean, staking was kind of the next iteration of proof of work, right? At least proof of stake. It's basically when a user will lock their tokens for a given amount of time to help support the operation and maintenance of a chain. It serves many purposes, right? Like one, like Thiago said, is to provide the economic security for the chain, right? That the more economic security is locked in a given chain, the harder it is to attacked by malicious actors, right? What you call a 51% attack. So it's important. This is kind of like a non-negotiable primitive when building a network, right? If you don't have economic security, then then it's going to be extremely easy to attack, and that's kind of a non-starter, right? So having that primitive taken care of is fundamental when building networks. It also helps decide what validators that are securing that network will be the ones producing and verifying the blocks, right? And there's different iterations of this. There's delegated proof of stake or nominated proof of stake. Over time, different proof of stake models have kind of evolved, and there's different flavors. And yeah, in general, staking has become one of, if not the most important primitive in the industry, right? Because there's been, I mean, Misha knows this better than anybody, right? There's a lot of DeFi products have been born from that. Restaking is kind of the next iteration of that. But yeah, I don't want to get too much into that because we can eat a lot of time with this topic. But yeah, at least that's how we view it.
Yeah, so I'd love to use this opportunity to get Misha's take. And also, Misha, feel free if you want to also share a little bit of the experience of Lido as well, and how it evolved into the idea to co-found Symbiotic and everything. I mean, whatever you want to share with us would be amazing.
Yeah, like just to disprove the rumors, like Lido is not connected to Symbiotic in any way. We have the same investors, which is public. But other than that, no. Like Lido is a good friend in a lot of ways because they operate the maybe the widest, the widest operator list ever assembled in one place. And they've been doing that for a long time, and slashing's never happened, or like they super rarely happened, like throughout the history. So yeah. Other than that, yeah, like the staking evolves in a lot of different ways. Like Francisco mentioned that like delegated proof of stake. Like now we can just call it proof of stake, because like every proof of stake becomes delegated, whether it's like designed by the architecture of core protocol or not. Ethereum was the last effort, as far as I understand, to do like pure proof of stake, and it like evolved into delegated proof of stake anyway. So yeah, like it's an actually for the insiders and people that are professionals in that, staking is super easy concept, but it's actually not. Like I asked a lot of people, like, why do we need proof of stake? Like, what's the point of it? Like, why would you need to lock it? Like, and explain to me, like, why do you need to lock it for a time? Like, what's the point, like, of the time period? And yeah, like, so it was evolving. I think that the first primitive to reuse the stake was not the first one, but the first successful one was Lido, because it unlocked it, and it basically created another layer of usage. So your stake is still performing and still secures the network, and at the same time it can be used to issue a stablecoin, right? So then like a Polkadot, or not Polkadot, but the Polkadot created an implementation of reusable stake as well. That was on like a bit of narrow side. And then Cosmos created a cross staking. We started adding prefixes to staking, so it was cross staking, and now it's restaking. And it's the same, really simple primitive. You reuse something that's underutilized multiple times. You use it to optimize, of course, but the outcomes of that that's the interesting part, and that's where Tanssi and other protocols of optimization nature comes in. Like the restaking part is super interesting, but it's not the juice of the matter, because like the shared security part. Once we get protocol that can onboard safely hundreds, if not thousands, of networks per year, in a way that the frameworks that are building to help people decentralize in a safe manner. So it becomes impossible for networks to launch centralized on multi-sig or like on like SQL database somewhere. Where we get to that point, then like restaking will really come into effect, because like we'll have a lot more demand. Currently, like it's normal to launch centralized. We see this in like operation of rollups and other parts of the woods. But yeah, like we are doing a good job, I think, preparing us for the next big push, where we need to be safe.
Yeah, no, you guys are definitely killing it, and you're doing an outstanding job. And I think that's not only my words. That's, I mean, when we travel, we go to events. I mean, it's impressive how you guys are dragging attention for the audience in general. And also, like, if you can evolve a little bit more in what Symbiotic offers, Misha, and maybe testing my elevator pitch about Symbiotic. What I used to say when people ask me, well, but what's Symbiotic? My default answer is like, restaking, right? So Symbiotic for me is like an operational system for restaking, right? These guys make that happen. So is that accurate? I'd love to hear your view on that, and also like to bring more content and more education, I would say, for our community. Could you please also elaborate on the risks and rewards of restaking? Like, what are the benefits for a user to restake, for instance? What are the risks, if any? So I'd love to hear more about that.
Is it for me?
Oh yeah, sorry, that's for you, Misha. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, like operational system is, yeah, it's a good analogy. Yeah, like our role is well, the base role is quite simple. We have like a triple of like operator, network, and stake. So the money managers, the workers, and the network in search of decentralization and economic, like, and security. Our role is to like not specify and not dictate how it's gonna be used, like what sort of mode of agreement is gonna be between these three parties. But once it's reached, our role is to enforce that. So everyone who needs to be punished should be punished. Everyone who needs to be rewarded are rewarded. Like everyone is everything is working according to the initial agreement. And if the agreement changes, everyone needs to have like a space to get out before the changes come into effect. So yeah, like this is the role is simple, but it's quite powerful in how we are every part of the system is designed to help protocols build in a safe manner, without any politic risks, without DAO risks, without us being hacked risk, in terms of like us as human beings, right? Like 3 out of 6 or like 1 out of like 5 out multi-sigs. No, like it was designed to scale and for everyone who builds on top of it to feel safe in innovation. So the question that was asked, like we had like a huge whiteboard, and like what the question that was asked always, like, do I want to use shared security? Like I want to use shared security, but, and we're like, let's make that in a way that like there are no buts. Like you need a really good reason to not use optimization of that. Same as like I think your guys are approaching your protocol in the same manner, right? Like, but like there should be no significant drawbacks, no friction points. That's how we get that's how we get enough networks, and like after we get a lot of networks, we can optimize because we get this enormous flow of ideas. In terms of risks, risk-taking is like it adds risks, right? A lot of people are like fear mongering. Yeah, like we're gonna stake like every Ethereum that there is, like every ETH there is, and then it's gonna get immediately slashed, and then like we are gonna lose the consensus that we have in Ethereum. That's a risk, yeah. But like first, risk-taking is about optimization of stake, right? It's not about getting the most stake. It's about getting less stake that you need. So like if we use up every if there is, like we're not doing optimization here, and that's why we limit and capping the stake that we have, because we don't need as much. The restaking is about optimization. It's not about using every dollar that you can get your hands on. And if you are responsible about the stake you acquire, if you're responsible about the slashing mechanisms and the workings of thereof, uh, the risks are, like, in my view, at least minimal. The political risks and like multi-sig risk, they're like way more important, because like the platform can can exert a real pressure on the builders. So we should be really careful about that.
Cool. No, thank you. And I love, Misha, how you make it sound easy, right? You say, no, that's a easy part. I mean, yeah, it's probably easier to be said than done, I'm pretty sure. So, but I love the way how you explain things like in a very, very simple way. But I'm pretty sure that a lot of sweat and tears are required to make that happen. And yeah, I agree with you. Like as much as we offer developers the best developer experience possible, and that's actually another value that we share with Symbiotic, the better, because we're gonna have more networks, we're gonna have more use cases, and yeah, more users at the end of the day, which is our holy grail, right? So to Francisco as well, talking about use cases, I'd love to hear your take, Francisco, about restaking in general. Like, why is restaking relevant to Web3, and what are like cool use cases that you can derive from that?
Yeah, sure. And I love the analogy, Misha, of the whiteboard of the shared security bot. Never thought of it that way. But yeah, I think restaking for us, it's exciting because in my mind, it's kind of the next iteration of like applications in Web3, right? Because if you've kind of seen the evolution of the space in general, you had Bitcoin, then Ethereum, which kind of allowed decentralized compute and logic on chain. Then you had a lot of demand for like app chains and rollups, right? First rollups, and then like general purpose rollups, and then application specific rollups and chains. But they come with a lot of trade-offs, right? Like with rollups in general, I think they're great. You know, it's been proven that they have product market fit. They're very much in demand. But there are trade-offs that are associated with deploying rollups and app chains, right? The first one is kind of the elephant in the room, which is kind of the centralized component, right? A lot of these rollups are relying on kind of single sequencers that, you know, they have the power of censorship. There's associations with like single points of failure. For us, you know, centralization is kind of at odds with like the principles that Web3 is supposed to represent. So this is something, one of the kind of underlying principles that's important to us in Tanssi is kind of how do we achieve the same effect without compromising on decentralization. Another aspect that we see a lot is that, you know, with rollups, customizability is limited, right? Like while application specific rollups, they're a lot more customizable than what you would have in a public chain like Ethereum or a general purpose rollup. They're mostly limited to EVM only, right? And there's nothing wrong with the EVM. I think EVM is great, but what excites me about restaking protocols like Symbiotic is that they enable the deployment of networks that kind of extend beyond the EVM, right? And that broadens the design space of what's possible for developers. You know, you can build things that are not limited to the EVM, like bridges, chains, Oracle networks, storage, decentralized storage protocols. I mean, there's many, many more. And I think by kind of providing this foundational level of a broader design space, we're just going to see more and more use cases being built that verify on chain, leveraging kind of Ethereum security via Symbiotic. So I think that's what kind of excites me. And also finality is another big one, right? Like with rollups, optimistic rollups, finality is very limited, right? Like it takes days for finality to be achieved. And now that we're entering a more modular space, a more cross-chain space, if you have poor finality properties, what we're starting to see is, you know, developers have to settle messages or transactions in one place throughout their cross-chain architectures. If you have poor finality, it's just going to extend kind of the settlement period for the end user, right? So it provides like a poor user experience. And I think protocols like Symbiotic and Tanssi are going to enable like fast finality networks. So yeah, I think those types of things, for me, it's about trade-offs, right? Like rollups are great. They enable a specific set of use cases, and networks via Symbiotic and Tanssi are going to enable a different type of use case that has different trade-offs, right? So I think that's kind of what's most relevant.
Amazing. And by the way, speaking of fast finality and app chains in general, I'd like to give also a shout out to the marketing team of Symbiotic. They just put together this week a very cool text about. Oh, by the way, here's the link here. Highly recommend you guys to give it a read. So it's a super interesting way to explain app chains from this new perspective, so to say. So networks. that leverage Symbiotic's infrastructure. And that's exactly what we are building together with Symbiotic, right? So highly recommend.
Yeah, there's also a good one on, like you said, Thiago, the fast finality one.
Yes.
Yeah, they're putting out great content.
Exactly. And by the way, I love also how you guys put the schemes, which make like the whole, I would say, content and information absorption like super interesting. So shout out to who put this together. But also, guys,
Thanks.
we spoke a little bit about shared security, right? And of course, like restaking is a way to extend Ethereum security to broader use cases. But Francisco, I would like to. That's actually a question that might have different answers. But
Yeah,
do you agree
I'm actually curious to get Misha's take on this as well.
Yeah. Let's start
Not
with you.
Ethereum security, like the Ethereum security in a sense, but not Ethereum security, like any security.
Yeah.
So if you could elaborate on that, Misha and Francisco, like, is restaking the same as shared security, or is it part of it? So that's a recurrent question that we receive.
Well, I can like chime in a bit. Shared security, in my view, is an extension, is an effect that comes of restaking. Because if restaking is like pure optimization, like it solves two problems: optimization and alignment. So like it's fairly basic concept, but like it enables, like once you get to the stake being super affordable, and a stake being infinitely alignable between your token and like the tokens that are going to be used for the grant of the security, you get to optimization. The restaking is a way to pay for the optimization, because you get cheap stake, you get good operator set, you get a lot of incentives, alignment to onboard a lot of new networks that were not covered before. And once you have this base of like incoming revenue and interest and development focus, there is incentive to optimize. Yeah, optimize the processes even more, because like currently operators can, like, they're onboarding like singular networks per month, right? And when it grows to like 10 or 100, like it's starting to make sense for optimizing, for creating SDKs, for creating protocols, platforms. Because like if you can speak to every one of them each week, your networks, like it doesn't make any sense for you to optimize. You can just like ask around.
Yeah, no, I agree with Misha, right? And this is like a common misconception, I think, in the space, like shared security in general. Like, what does that mean, right? Like, I agree with Misha in the sense that like restaking is kind of this foundation or primitive that enables the concept of shared security. But when I speak, you know, and I've spoken with other projects and even investors in the past, and they were like, yeah, shared security is kind of, they made the association that kind of restaking means shared security. But what we see right now with restaking protocols like Symbiotic is that, you know, they enable this like very important primitive for any network to leverage this concept of restaking. But then there's a bunch of work that teams need to do, right? So first of all, you need to go out and start talking and convincing to operators or validators to kind of opt in to kind of securing, to validate your network. This is already for us like friction point number one, right? Like the fact that a team that is, let's say, building, I don't know, some DeFi protocol, they have to go out and kind of speak with operators, understand what they do. That's already an expenditure of time and resources, right? So that's kind of pain point number one that we want to solve. And then number two is like, once assuming that like you've convinced these validators or operators to secure your network, then you need to attract kind of the restaked value to that network, right? For the economic security. So then that for us is like friction point number two, right? And like Misha said, it's kind of it's a two-way market, right? For these operators and validators, it's also overwhelming. Like, okay, who the hell is this team? Are they good? Is the token that they're going to reward us for providing this validation services, is that going to be worth something or not? You know, so it kind of creates this inefficient market that it's friction, right? So this is really what we want to tackle and provide with Tanssi. We want to build leveraging Symbiotic's restaking capabilities, what we're going to do is we're going to build a decentralized network ourselves. So we're going to do all the work in terms of bootstrapping and recruiting operators and validators to opt into our network. We're going to attract the restaked value to secure our network. And then networks that deploy through Tanssi are going to be able to leverage kind of the shared security that we provide. So that's, at least in my opinion, that's what shared security means to me, right? It's removing the necessity, removing the responsibility of teams to recruit, bootstrap their own validators, attract restaked value. I mean, that's not a trivial thing to do, right? So that's really what it means to me, and that's kind of the objective with Tanssi, right? It's kind of a network to deploy networks, and like Misha said, that's a more scalable model, right? Because you make it easier for the validators, you make it easier for the developers, and it's just scalable, right? You can deploy a lot more networks that way, not only from a technical standpoint, but also from like a practical one as well, right? Because teams can now deploy in hopefully minutes, right, instead of months. So that's kind of the whole idea with Tanssi.
Amazing. Yeah, and of course, like part of our homework in Tanssi by building this infrastructure together with Symbiotic is to talk to teams, right? And that's a very recurrent feedback that they give, right? I don't want to take care of that. I want to optimize my AMM algorithm. I want to, build the graphics of my game, whatever. I don't want to take care of this type of infrastructure management.
Yeah, and also what I said before, right? I think the most common thing to see, like usually at these stages, is like teams building like SDKs or CLIs or tools that make it easy. With Tanssi, what we want to do is build a protocol, right? So everything is automated, everything is permissionless. We don't compromise on kind of decentralization and security. So like anybody can come and deploy a network in a fully automated fashion without kind of compromising on the decentralization component. Obviously, that's complex, right? It's a lot more complex to build than like general tooling. But yeah, I think that's kind of what is in line with the principles of Web3 and what we want to do.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing that our DevRel team used to say is like, essentially, most of the times that we are talking to a team and the idea is to create an integration, the first step of the integration is always, let's wait the Telegram channel. So that's what we want to avoid at Tanssi, right? The idea is that you don't need to to know myself, to know Francisco. I mean, the idea is to make it fully automate and permissionless in a protocol fashion, right? Instead of just building an SDK and everything. But using my previous point of like talking to teams and everything, Misha, one of the feedbacks that we are receiving a lot about Symbiotic is the degree of flexibility that you guys provide, right? Can you please elaborate more on that? Maybe confronting what you guys are building and your roadmap towards like flexibility, offering a more flexible solution to the developers, comparing also to other existing restaking frameworks. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, for every security protocol, starting from like merge mining and going up to the Polkadot and the Cosmos, and then the main problem is the demand side. This protocol needs to deliver value to a lot of different networks and a lot of different participants. Otherwise, it's pointless. So each time we thought about it, the first question was the bad one and the drawback one, and the outcome of this question was always like, how do we eliminate this friction point for a protocol? So the main the first point that we got to is like protocol should feel safe and in launching it with us, right? Because there is always an argument like, I'll build it myself. Like I invest some money, it's gonna take a long time, but it's gonna be mine. I'm gonna be in control of that. So we decided, let's eliminate that. Let's make that the networks building on top of Symbiotic is gonna be retaining the control over there. And this is not a small part of the network, right? It's a consensus. So this is the part you want to be in control. So we started developing it and figured out that we need to have the protocol needs to be permissionless. Otherwise, demand is gonna be limited. The huge, like really big teams are never gonna build on that, like or it's gonna be a really uphill battle every time because of that. So like once we decided for it to be permissionless, we started thinking about like, okay, the contracts are gonna be immutable. What can we how are we gonna use them? Like how networks are going to be using their contracts, like how do we can predict a market that haven't been created yet? Like we'll write something in immutable contracts, they're not migratable, they're not upgradable. Like how would that look like? And then we see a protocol, a network that we are not like considered. Yeah, are we going to migrate every token there is just to accommodate this one use case? And from that, like we try to figure out like which parts are going to be immutable, which parts can be flexible, and that's where flexibility comes in. The core, as I explained it, the core is like just making sure that like every agreement is followed between these three parties, and everything else can be like created outside of it and be really flexible. Because like again, to get the demand side of things and to get like the most networks and to help the most networks, you can't use one size fits all. You can't like say like, okay, we're gonna be using this token, it's gonna be intersubjective, and it's gonna be like and it's gonna handle all of this stuff. Some networks can say like, no, like we want to use verifiers, we want to use provers or something else. We want to use committees, but the committees of people that we select and companies that we select. A lot of other, I'm not even talking about like proof of governance and another like really like edge things that require like completely different models of activation and validator selection. So yeah, like everything, like the core is immutable. That decides like where, like how to enforce the agreements between these three parties. Everything else is flexible. Like everything else can be designed for like from the network position. So slashing logic, restaking logic, like burner contracts, the collateral types. So like our system is that flexible that the collateral can be the stake that is under slashing can be somewhere else, not even on Ethereum or EVM chain. It can be like on Celestia or somewhere else, or Solana. The system is designed in a way that as long as participants thinks that there is a way to slash it somewhere within the slashable window, we are okay with that. So even that like really like interesting case can be accommodated. But it was like a software, like a design necessity at first. Because like we needed to like, if you create something immutable and flexible, the only way to do it is for it to be really simple. So we limited ourselves into functionality that's going to be like the core of it.
No,
It took a
excellent.
lot of
And
time.
actually,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead, Misha.
No, it took a lot of time. Like maybe like 6 months in, we were really struggling, like to make it in a way that's like it's gonna be just right. And like I had a team that was working like breaking DeFi protocols for a living for a long time, and like even those guys were like really struggling to create a design that was up to the task.
Yeah, on that point, Misha, I think we're also kind of going through this now, right? Building permissionless protocols that are effective, that have a good developer experience, that don't compromise on decentralization, on security, customizability. Like you said, it's extremely challenging, right, to design them, and like it's painful, right, for the team. There's a painful process you go through as a team to like build these things, but the other side of that coin in my mind is like the harder it is to build something, the harder it is to replicate it as well, right? So you don't want it to be easy, in my opinion, right? Because then other people can just replicate it, and you lose kind of competitive advantages, right? So yeah,
that there is this argument, yeah, but I think like yeah, I believe in people that create stuff. This is like the other guys can be like stronger on the marketing side. The other guys can be like stronger on, I don't know, like yeah, the sides of like I don't know, BD. But it's we talked to like around 500 teams during the last like three months, and I like people from the other side, like at least in our part of the woods, tend to gravitate to actual builders. So yeah, they can the protocols can be forked, but there is the inherent quality of being
Yeah,
the designers of them. Yeah, because people really respect that.
yeah, no, not only that, but like, sure, you can fork it, but another thing is understanding the underlying code and how to push it forward and how to evolve it, right? That's, I mean, that's the hard part, not forking it, but so yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we all know that the examples of like the forks of Uniswap, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
they can be successful for a while, but like, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Amazing. Yeah, I think you guys touched in several interesting points that actually like I would like to highlight here, like customizability and flexibility. These are also like true values that we fully share. So actually the premise of building an app chain is exactly like accessing more flexibility and more customizability, and that's something that we always had as a North Star in Tanssi. And yeah, just knowing that you guys share this value as well, it really aligns our interests in even more. But yeah, going to our final question before we open to several questions as well, I'd like to know from you both guys uh, why app chains can drive the future of Web3. How do you guys think that this flexibility and all this customizability that we just spoke to, how this can add value to the final user? How are the cool? How are we gonna be seeing like new use cases emerging from that? What type of new tooling essentially this unlocks to our builders and founders? And yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the like it enables people like and protocols to iterate faster and in a safer manner. Like that's the whole thing about it. Like if we see, like if we look at it from the historical point of view, we started. You needed to launch your own chain, right? And you had like a lot of like GPUs that were burning a lot of energy just to start like your coin with different block size. And we tried a lot of things. Something like stayed, some things were destroyed during the process. Some things found like found a huge like niche where they can be used. Just look at Tron, right? Like iterations over iterations over iterations. And app chains can help with that a lot because they can be customized, they can be tailored made for the use case. And yeah, like and evolve in a manner that you don't have to like wait for Ethereum Foundation to add something, and just straight up edit yourself. And yeah, like our goal is to like at least for like Symbiotic, I tell people like we are not the innovation, we are the guys that are going to enable safe innovation and to optimize it. Yeah, like that's the whole program. That's the whole goal.
Amazing. Francisco, do you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with everything he said, and I think it's also about, you know, what is the developer trying to build, right? I think like decentralized networks or app chains, what you want to call them, they just enable different properties that what has been available to right now, right? I think for me, sovereignty is a big one, right? Like developers want sovereignty, they want independence, they want the ability to kind of evolve their own kind of use case and their own network as they please. Customizability is another big one, right? Like you can't customize the public chain as you want because you're sharing it with everybody else. So I think those are kind of things that that are important to developers, as we've already seen, right? And it's kind of what Misha said, right? Like that's one concept, but then the second concept is like, how do you facilitate that? How do you facilitate the deployment as quick as possible so that they don't get discouraged, or at least in my experience, you know, finding high quality builders, it's kind of a numbers game, right? Like out of, let's say you get like 1,000 developers at the top of the funnel, at the bottom funnel of like the builders that will actually find product market fit and they will be successful and they'll find a useful use case, like that's going to be a small fraction of the total amount of developers on top, right? And the problem that I've seen to date is that, you know, the developer experience around building these networks is so poor that like that number that you have on top is very limited, right? So if you have, instead of 1,000 builders on top, you have 10, then that bottom number of successful use cases reduces from, let's say, I don't know, 50 or 100 to maybe 1 if you're lucky, right? So I think this is what we're really trying to do with Tanssi, is kind of making the process so easy to build these decentralized networks that the top of the funnel of builders coming in is going to be maximized or optimized, and then the probability of finding good builders just increases, right? So this is kind of what we're focusing on, and without Symbiotic, it wouldn't be possible, right? So I think we're each trying to optimize different layers of the stack, and hopefully in the future, I agree with Misha, right? This traditional concept of app chain, I think, is going to become kind of a little more outdated, right? Because at the beginning it was like, okay, I want an app chain because I want the sovereignty, I want the customizability, I want the economic value of using my own token to incentivize the security. You didn't even have validators, right? So you have to kind of bootstrap the validators, pay them to secure your chain. So there were just so many inefficiencies that now it's evolving into these shared economic models that Symbiotic provides and Tanssi provides. And I think in the future, it's even going to be like fully kind of on demand, right? Where you don't even have to have a chain that produces blocks every like second or 6 seconds or whatever. Similarly to how AWS works, you know, you're going to be able to tap into kind of decentralized block space or compute on demand, kind of like, and that's what Tanssi does, right? It's kind of like a Kubernetes that enables developers it orchestrates all these processes on behalf of developers so that they can just use these resources as they please, without kind of all this concept of infrastructural inefficiency. So yeah, that's kind of the vision that I see, but we have to kind of lay out these building blocks first, right? And the space moves extremely quickly. Like 6 months ago, none of this, or a year ago, none of this existed, right? And now we'll see what happens in the next 12 months, right? And all these are concepts, but you also need to focus on building and executing. Like Misha said, right? It's one part is the builders, which you need to attract the builders with high quality kind of concepts and values, but then there's BD, there's marketing. So there's many parallel threads of execution that need to be delivered correctly in order for this whole thing to come to fruition, right? So yeah, that's kind of how we're thinking about it.
Agree. And guys, I want to be mindful of the time here. So I'd like to open for some questions from the audience. If you have, we also actually received some questions in our channels here. So yeah, for those who are watching us, feel free to ask some questions. If you don't have any, yeah, that's the first question we received, like kind of offline. That's more for Misha. So actually, Misha, if you want to start like answering this one, I think we already touched briefly on several aspects of that. So, but if you want to elaborate, and meanwhile, we can give some time to our audience to just shoot some other questions that they might have.
Yeah, like I would describe the difference of us being scalable, because like we don't have a strong vision about like how things are supposed to be handled. We let networks decide. I think we have like a much bigger funnel in like protocols that we can accommodate, and it shows like with the traction that we have acquired through like during our 3 months of being visible. So yeah, like the overall approach was like I think Eigenlayer, like it's my humble opinion, but I think Eigenlayer converges to our vision a bit. But like in terms of actual design and how like the initial push was started, we were created to be not a walled garden in any way, but as basically like an all-encompassing protocol. The design is that like if Symbiotic accounts for like, I don't know, 99% of staking market, it's not going to be an additional like a huge risk and single point of failure, because the primitives that are going to be actually handling the slashing and the rewards and the vaults and the collateral and network middleware, they're going to be completely different, or at least like diverse. And yeah, like the main difference is scale, I would say, in the approach, because like you can't. We've when we designed the protocol, we designed it in a way to be like less, like to have least amount of friction and doubt, and create the least amount of doubts in the mind of builders. So that's why we don't have our own data availability rollup or any other protocol that might be competing, or say like we haven't created a system that is going to compete with Tanssi, right? Because that's going to dissuade builders, right? Like Francisco and Tiago, that's going to dissuade, even if we have some one primitive that's going to be competing with our actual like networks. It's not going to be great, because it sends a signal like, if you make us big enough, we're going to just copy what you have and integrate it into our protocol. And overall structure, like you can select like networks and network like framework builders, like my co-host here. They are the ones who will decide the direction of this industry. Our job is to accommodate. So, and this approach, if like it's a mission. So this is the difference, like between at least like the rhetoric one, and it translates to every business aspect and developer aspect and everything like that. So I think on the surface we look kind of similar, but in applied layer we are nothing alike. And like I think within a year, when the flywheel effect starts, it's going to be more clear to everyone.
Thank you, Misha.
You're making me more of a believer than I already was, Misha. Nice answer. Yeah.
Yeah, great insights. We have also another question here from the audience, and I guess that's more for Francisco, I'd say. So it's regarding RAS providers, right? So Francisco, we touched briefly on that as well, but like, can you elaborate like how Tanssi is different to RAS providers in general, and what does Tanssi bring to the table?
Yeah, sure, and we did discuss this a little bit, like in kind of previous topics, right? I think rollup as a service providers are mainly catering to the deployment of application-specific rollups, and I think that's great. Like I mentioned before, rollups have gotten a bunch of traction, but they come with a bunch of trade-offs, right? And I think what we're building on Symbiotic is just networks that have different properties, right? And you could even consider them kind of complementary to rollups, and we're even starting to see this today, right? Rollups that leverage. We'll see this more, right? Rollups on ETH that kind of leverage a network on Symbiotic for a specific purpose, right? Like fast finality or DA, stuff like that, because they just kind of fulfill different use cases. I think rollups are great for like just throughput, high throughput applications. But then, and they're very simple and easy to get started, right? But then you're compromising on things like decentralization, since currently there's only single sequencer sets on these rollups. The customizability is limited, right? So it's great to set up like a dedicated EVM environment, but then if you want to set up other stuff like storage protocols or prover networks, things like that, they're just like not efficient in the EVM, right? It can become too expensive to run these things. And then the customizability of it and the finality is another big one, right? So I think the networks that we're enabling on Symbiotic just provide a different set of trade-offs and properties than what rollups provide. And for us, this was like a very, very important question, right? Like when deciding to build on Ethereum, because we had heated debates about this internally. It's like, okay, guys, like what are we going to build on Ethereum, right? I felt pretty strongly that we didn't need to build like the 20-second RAS provider on Ethereum because it was a very competitive space already. But that's where we saw a very unique opportunity with restaking protocols, right? I think the design space is a lot kind of more blue ocean in that regard. There's a lot more potential. It's at the very beginning, and we saw a very unique opportunity to kind of tackle this issue that we saw that's prevalent in kind of the developer experience of restaking protocol. So yeah, we want to become kind of the dominant infrastructure protocol that will enable the deployment of these networks on Symbiotic.
Amazing. Guys, I think we are coming to an end here. Our time is about to finish. So, closing remarks. Misha and Francisco, do you guys have any message to the community? Any closing remarks you guys want to provide?
Yeah, I can start. Start closing. It's infrastructure, so it's important to pace yourself. Even with all this hype, it will take some time for us to get into full force. The great thing about shared security is the more use cases we have, the more the flywheel is gonna accelerate. Because like each network that starts, we have like fast finality one that's launched. We have like the Oracle that's like option Oracle that's super fast and like infrastructure is different. And every like before it was isolated. You talked to like one validator, like two validators or 5 validators. They were handling yourself like it's private. Like the deals were like private. Everyone like the synergy was not there yet. And shared security, once we see the first primitive, the first middleware that's deployed and in use, and the first process of like acquiring a stake, it's easier for every next participant. And once this flywheel starts to actually like accelerate, and I think that's gonna like 2025 is gonna be an actual year of delivery on the promise of shared security and restaking. So once the flywheel starts going, I think it's gonna be amazing to see. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's quite. Sorry, Tiago, go ahead.
No, I would just make a joke in a question like, Misha, can we expect to see the restaking summer in 2025?
Like the beauty of this is we don't like infrastructure does not depend on market cycles. Like if we are like we'll be prepared for the next one. It's fine. Like but like during the off days and during the summer days, like bull runs or bear territory, doesn't matter. Like everything is gonna be just this much easier. And the next, like if we'll have a winter, the next champion that's gonna get us out of there is gonna be benefiting from what we do, and have the higher chance of successfully like getting us out there. If it's gonna be the bull run, yeah, like holy something. Like I can decrease my go to market by 6 to 16 months. Like just imagine the value add for the bull market. So it doesn't matter. Like in every way, if we are successful, we are going to be easier every period of time, like of the market cycle.
Love it, Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say I think we're in a very exciting time, right? This is just the beginning. I'm a huge fan of how quickly this space moves, right? It's incredibly quick. I think the Web3 space and the Web3 market in general is very unbiased and objective, right? So I look forward to finding out what the market actually needs and what the market demands. We all have like our hypotheses and theses, but let's see if they're correct and adapting along the way. And in Tanssi, just trying to deliver on these concepts, right? And providing the best developer experience possible, accelerating kind of the evolution of the industry, being kind of in the front lines of battle. That's something that I love. And working with projects like Symbiotic that have aligned values. That's something else I love about this space, is just the collaborative nature of wanting to push things forward. And we're just looking forward to launching mainnet, bringing developers on chain, and delivering and all these things and concepts that we talked about on this space, right? Because it's easy to talk, but it's a lot harder to deliver. And this is where you kind of see the quality of teams, right? So I feel excited about the challenge and the responsibility that we have ahead of us. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Couldn't agree more. Best days lie ahead, right? Guys, thank you very much once again for participating here. Misha, Francisco, thank you. Big shout out to our community as well. Thanks, guys, for joining us today. By the way, Misha, I already invite you to a future session of the Tanssi Cast. Maybe we can provide. We are talking about how quickly the market moves, right?
Yeah, so maybe 6 months from now, let's see what we're talking about.
Exactly. Maybe in 6 months we can make a refresh here. I'm pretty sure the community is gonna love. Guys, thank you very much. So this was the first Tanssi Cast. We're gonna keep bringing insightful information about Tanssi, about our partners, about cool things that we are building, and see you guys in the next Tanssi Cast. Bye bye.